Good morning once again, everyone. Section B. Welcome to another lecture on cardiology. So this morning, we will going to have our last module for our midterm coverage. So I hope everyone was able to review the things that I asked you to review. Hopefully, um, at least you have run through the module not twice, and then the videos also twice. Okay, I will just give some additional discussions this morning. Okay, so let us have our prayer. May I invite everyone to put themselves in the holy presence of the Lord. Let us all say in the name of the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit. Amen. Almighty loving God, thank you, Lord, for this day. Thank you for all the goodness that you have showered upon us, for all the wisdom and the protection that we have received every day despite our shortcomings, despite our undeserving acts, and despite our imperfections. We continue to lift up everything, Lord, everything we do, may even the small success and achievements we have will bring glory to your name. This we pray in Jesus' name. Amen. In the name of the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit. Amen. All right. Good morning, everyone. I hope everyone is um, in high spirits and energy this morning. So, as I've mentioned a while ago, today we will have the last module for midterms. This is module. I'm not sure if I have edited um the number here. Module 8 ba talaga to? Basta, this is the last module for our midterms. Okay? And this is just a very short module be- and not really complicated one because we have at least discussed majority of the conditions that will lead to development of this cardiovascular event, and also the medications or pharmacotherapy that we use for DVT has been discussed in the previous modules. So I hope when you watch the supplementary video that I have provided, meron kayong ma-recall doon sa mga previous modules. Okay. So this is our learning outcomes this morning. We have here, of course, a very short explanation of our DVT pathophysiology following Virchow's triad. Identify clinical features, risk factors. We will going to identify the different categories of risks that will determine in, the intensity of our treatment for DVT. Also, the importance of diagnostic tools for DVT because there are other conditions that really some doctors in the practice, sometimes they don't have strict protocol, or they don't follow in reality the diagnostic tools, and just base their their assessment on symptomatic manifestation of patients. So for DVT, treatment really requires diagnostic tool. Okay. We have also here different goals of therapy. And you have to remember, in every conditions in um, cardio events that we have discussed, the main goal of therapy that we have listed in our module is to promote and preserve quality of life. And as I've mentioned before, and I want to reiterate right now, as we end our midterms, everyone, that when we have a goal to promote and preserve quality of life, it has to be defined with measurable outcomes. So when you write it in your clinical pharmacy intervention or in your therapy monitoring plan or your goals, you have to mention, do not forget, what are the outcomes. If the patient has DVT, what are the measurable outcomes that you will look into in order to observe or in order to make sure that this is promoting and preserving the quality of life that the patient has. No? It will not diminish the quality of life of the patient. So, in other words, your plan or your measurable outcomes include decreasing drug-drug interaction, preventing adverse drug events to happen, or minimizing the risk, things like that. With all the contextualization and with all the specifics for DVT, and in other cases also, if the circumstance, other cardiovascular events, then it has to be contextualized. Now, we will have evidence-based recommendations. Of course, that is requirement for everything that we do. It has to be evidence-based, especially if we deal with anticoagulants. Okay, anticoagulants should have specific. The different anticoagulants that we have carry specific profiles. No, it has specific fine prints. It has specific criteria who are allowed to use this, what are the dosing interval, or what is the dosing adjustments. In particular, we give consideration for the kidney status of the patients. So we will arrive with the best anticoagulant therapy for our patient. We shall have to tailor therapy for special populations. There are drugs, anticoagulant drugs, that are not allowed for pregnant women. There are anticoagulants drug that is dangerous also for the kidneys of our cancer patients, and also will decrease quality of life of our cancer patients. And as I mentioned a while ago, those with renal impairments, and of course the pediatrics. So overall, with our discussion later on, I want you to develop, or I want everyone to learn how to be patient-centered. And then you have to know how to educate your patients following our systematic follow-up and different measurable outcomes. So it does, in other words, everyone, our approach or our learning strategy for you to be able to manifest and convey and express yourself, you have to memorize. If you don't know the facts, you cannot express anything at all. After you memorize, you can be logical and you can analyze cases. All right? So I am emphasizing this morning because our exam is fast approaching. And even though you understood the things that I have been talking during our lectures, I can see everyone's faces brightening up. It's brightening whenever they understood something. No, I can see it. Now you are nodding, you are parang agreeing with all the explanations that I gave during lectures, and I believe you understand it. But again, if you don't memorize the facts that I have presented, some point during the exam you will be puzzled, and yeah, there are really low turnover of scores. So aside from becoming or understanding it, also provide or make sure that meron kayong measurable outcomes din sa journey ninyo as a student. Okay, so first and foremost, you cannot achieve memorization level, no, if you will just read my module once. So you have to focus, review twice or thrice the modules, the recordings during our lecture so that you can absorb it. Because I believe naman na intindihan nyo yung mga lectures natin. So sa dami ng inyong subjects, naghahalo-halo na siya. So yun lang, extra effort lang to memorize so that whenever there are specific questions, you will be able to eliminate and provide the correct or the best answer to the exam. Okay? So let's move forward now to our short introduction about VTE. VTE, if we will talk about VTE, it has two different examples or classification. The venous thromboembolism, we can have deep vein thrombosis and pulmonary embolism. So it is obvious in the videos, the supplementary videos, what happened or what is happening during VTE. It requires, or of course, it requires predisposing factors. What are these factors? At some point, if the patient's blood pressure is erratic and asymptomatic, there are events, especially if the diet is not also managed well, there are events that are unrecognized, not really significantly manifesting in the day-to-day events, but it is developing. It is developing inside the body, such as DVT. Okay? So, there would be uncontrolled hypertension causing risk for bleeding, and that will cause DVT. Now, I just want to make sure that everybody would be able to differentiate coagulation versus thrombosis so that you will not be confused later on. Anyone who can differentiate coagulation versus thrombosis? Does anyone have any idea? Ano yung pagkakaiba ng coagulation versus thrombosis? Pareho ba silang dalawa? Kasi we always use the word anticoagulant. And then there's another drug also we use, antithrombosis or thrombolytic agent. Pareho ba yung dalawa? Based on your encounters before, may sinong nalilito sa dalawa terms na to? Yes, Phoebe, can you give it a try?
Sa pagka-understand ko po, Doc, yung ati pong coagulation, parang it's a normal phenomena na sa ating body wherein para siyang na-activate kapag feel ng body na kailangan niya ng parang kumbaga feedback mechanism or parang natural defense na ng body. And then yung thrombosis po kasi, wala po kasing parang hindi siya normal and then nagpo-form siya ng clot wherein hindi naman dapat siyang mag-form ng clot, Doc.
Okay, thank you for that, Phoebe. Everyone agrees to that answer. So, coagulation process is a physiologic, no? Physiologic. Thrombosis is pathophysiologic. Okay. Tanya yan dyan. Meaning to say, kahit meaning to say, pag masugatan tayo and kailangan natin makontrol yung bleeding, our body will undergo normal process of activating the coagulation pathway. So that is normal coagulation. On the other hand, even without bleeding, even without any requirement for coagulation, for clotting, if it happens, if there's formation of clot without any reason, that is pathophysiologic, abnormal, it is referred as thrombosis. Okay? So, tandaan nyo lang yung mga terms na yan para hindi tayo marito. So, if we are going to have anticoagulants, meaning to say, we will going to stop the process. If we stop the process, kumbaga, in logical thinking, if we stop the process, wala pa dapat na form na clots. Are you following? We will apply the anticoagulant term. It says here, Rina also says here, it slows down blood clot. Yeah, try to stop or try to slow down the coagulation process. And then she also mentioned antithrombotic. We will going to reduce the pathophysiologic formation of clot. And then when we say thrombolytic agent, there's a clot already that was formed because of the abnormal formation, and we want to bust it out. No, gusto nating i-dissolve or i-dissolve yung clot using thrombolytic agents. Okay, so if there is hypertension na uncontrolled, there's the risk of bleeding, and that will going to cause thrombosis. It will really precipitate thrombosis in patients with uncontrolled hypertension. So one of the key treatment for that is to give anticoagulants. So anticoagulants, we have different types. It was mentioned, or it was presented in the last part of the module. Okay, moreover, there are key concepts that we have to remind here. We have different risk factors that would precipitate and aggravate our patient's condition with VTE. So our risk factors here, there are two risk factors mentioned below that I want to introduce right now so that ma-relate ninyo. We have transient and permanent risk factors. Okay? So there are different circumstances that subjects our patient, we have different circumstances that subject our patient to different risks. And this risk can be permanent risk coming from the patient himself, given all the unmodifiable risks the patient possesses. And then there are some circumstances naman that subject the patients to, like this one, different events that are considered as transient, not transient or temporary risks. This includes immobility, if the patient needs to undergo surgery, if the patient suddenly was diagnosed with cancer, or the patients need to have estrogen therapy. And most of the time, it's not the low-dose estrogen therapy, like for example, for contraception. Estrogen therapy that is high-dose therapy that is associated or that is required for the treatment of breast cancer, ovarian cancer, and related to reproductive systems na mga malignancies. Okay, so these are transient risks, right? And then I have mentioned during the learning outcomes that diagnostic confirmation is essential because there are a lot of differential diagnosis if we will just use the clinical symptoms. What ang manifestation ng patients na may DVT might be mistaken with varicose veins. It might be mistaken with some other myalgias and vitamin B complex deficiency. So it really needs to have diagnostic confirmation. Because why? What's the importance of that? Because if the patient experience warmth or experience painful areas in the lower limbs, sa calf niya, and the treatment for VTE is anticoagulants, and if we will if you will going to to pull out in your memory what are the risks of receiving anticoagulants, it really is a serious drug that requires monitoring. So as much as possible, we will not subject a patient to receive anticoagulant. So it has to be diagnosed first that it's really confirmed DVT. Because what if it's just myalgia? What if it's just varicose veins? So later on, I'll present what are the tests that will confirm the condition so that treatment will be initiated. It also mentioned here that we need to have rapid-acting anticoagulants. Okay, because if the patient is or the patient has long-standing hypertension, right? Patient with DVT is expected to have a long-standing hypertension, and worst case is if it's uncontrolled, then thrombosis is happening inside the body. Thrombosis is happening inside the body, and it has to be stopped immediately because every minute, every hour pass that it's happening inside the body, then the veins or the blood might no, yung pressure, the blood pressure might cause series of events that will result to pulmonary embolism. So we really need rapid acting anticoagulants, and it is considered as the backbone of our therapy. For DOACs, please remember DOACs is direct oral anticoagulant. It has simplified therapy, but DOAC, if you remember, DRE, it's a very good treatment. Anticoagulants, no, it's an anticoagulant. It's very good for managing patients like with atrial fibrillation to prevent stroke, for acute coronary syndrome to prevent stroke. It is also very good for DVT to prevent pulmonary embolism and to prevent stroke. But it has this one. It needs careful patient selection because if you can remember the table in the table that I have in module 2 under atrial fibrillation, if I can remember, there are different requirement or criteria following creatinine clearance and body weight for these different DOAC. Can you still recall the creatinine clearance cutoff for the dabigatran, rivaroxaban, apixaban, and enoxaban? Can you still recall what are the body weight cutoff for these anticoagulants, and when can it be given or when should not be given to a patient? So I want you class to go back to that module later on and review it, okay? Because I have given it already to you. So please make sure that drug profiles. This is your responsibility to memorize the drug profiles. I don't need to go back for each drug profile one by one and read it to the class. Students, again, I will reiterate myself. I will not go back to each drugs and reiterate it to the class because you can read it on your own and it's self-explanatory. It's in our book in DePero. It's in MIMS, Lexicomp, up to date, ever you have there. You have to dig in and review the drug profiles. Okay, I have provided already the table, the summary table for DOAC for J, and please review it under module 2. Okay, now for most patients with uncomplicated DVT, we can treat them safely as outpatients. So that is according to DePiro because it was presented in the chapter for venous thromboembolism because emphasized there that we can give those DOAC that is given as subcutaneous for patients as to treat patients as outpatients. So, our primary goal talaga is not to admit these patients because we want to promote ambulation. Kaya dapat ang i-consider natin ng mga gamot are those convenient to be given as outpatient or for outpatient setting. Okay, I hope you're following. With the pathophysio, later on, you will realize that ambulation is necessary, and as much as possible, we will not admit a patient if wala namang indication for admission para makapaglakad-lakad yung ating pasyente. Okay? Para pwede siyang mag-exercise, pwede siyang maka-move around. Kasi pag naka-admit siya, of course, meron siyang swero, meron din siyang IV drugs. Of course, it will worsen the DVT. It will worsen thrombosis and formation of an embolus. Okay? So, let's move forward now to pathophysiology. It's very prominent. The pathophysiology for DVT follows Virchow's triad. Okay, Virchow's triad. If you encounter this term in the future, I hope it will activate your memory on DVT. No? So, i-ano nyo na yan, i-take note nyo na yan. Isa yan sa mga keyword, pag may Virchow's triad na na-mention, that is about one of the differential diagnoses that it can lead into this DVT. Okay? Also, another one, if we will talk about infectious disease, can be COVID-19. Okay? So what is a Virchow's triad? Talks about venostasis, it talks about vascular injury, and hypercoagulability. They are triad nga, tatlo yan siya. Venostasis, so it is affected by the patient's immobility, hindi nakakagalaw, merong valve damage, and hospitalization. Vascular injury, there is trauma. No, it can be due to accidental trauma, or it can be due to surgery or catheters. Okay? Hypercoagulability, it can be inherited, like thrombophilias, or transient risks, like estrogen, pregnancy, and cancer. So, if you mind this hypercoagulability here, inherent thrombophilia is considered as a permanent risk. Please take note, I have mentioned it a while ago, we have two types of risks. So, inherent thrombophilia is a permanent risk, while on the other hand, estrogen therapy, pregnancy, and cancer, according to the PIRO, they are considered as transient risks, and they cause hypercoagulability. Another is if you are going to have, if the patient is infected with COVID-19, that risk hypercoagulability. This is very nasty and it activates Virchow's triad. Okay? So, to project it well, this is how Virchow triads look like. It is in your module. So, just be mindful. We can do a mnemonic here, like VI, just to give you, to help you with your memorization. VI, there's vascular injury. There's damage to blood vessel caused by some events that activates coagulation cascade. And then we have here the R. Where is the R coming from? It comes from this one here, alteration in blood flow, meaning there is reduced blood flow. Okay, that's the R. How about the ACH here? Actually, I just get it from here. Reduced blood flow, and there is change in hemodynamics. Change in hemodynamics. Okay, and then OW. Ano yung OW? For me, the O is the thrombus. And the W represents the veins. If you were going to, to draw, and it's also in the video a while ago, a vein is unique compared to the artery because a vein has, what's this, class? What is this I'm drawing? What do you think is this? Anyone who can guess? Yeah, that's right. Thank you so much. Baka iba yung maisip nyo sa drawing ko. This is the very unique and prominent anatomical feature of a valve. A vein, of a vein. It has a valve, a pair of valve here. Kaya yan siya W. Kaya ito siya W. Okay? Just for me. I don't know if you will use it on your own. And the O here is if thrombosis happens, no, our blood flow going up to the heart, diba? Against gravity. So it needs pressure to go up. If thrombosis happens, di ba, na-mention natin kanina, nagpo-form siya ng clot abnormally kahit walang bleeding, kahit walang cut dyan, kahit walang damage dyan, nagpo-form siya ng clot. So the clot can form, flow, and be lodged in the valve. It can flow again, going with the blood and get stuck. It gets stuck in the valve. When it gets stuck and there is increased pressure because of hypertension and increased pressure because we need to pump more going to the heart, this one here will cause increase in pressure here, expanding the veins. And sometimes, because of the transient risk, it will be dislodge and travel. When it is dislodge and travel, no, this is the O that I am imagining with the virtual word. It will travel to the heart, to the lungs, to the brain. And when it travels to the lungs, that's our pulmonary embolism. Okay, so that is the pathophysio of our DVT. Now, if we understand the pathophysio, it will make sense that it is manifested with swelling. You see the swelling drawing here? Kita nyo ba yung swelling drawing? This part here is the swelling. So that swelling causes pain, redness, and very prominent itong warmth, no, on the affected limb. Now, if this is just the clinical presentation, you are not going to check for diagnostic tools here. It might be a lot of, swelling, pain, is a lot of differential diagnosis for this one. So, kung ganito lang yung pinapakita ng patient natin, hindi dapat tayo magbigay kaagad ng DOAC. You have to counter-check the doctor's assessment if the patient really is a candidate for anticoagulant. Because it's very dangerous to receive anticoagulant. Hindi siya yung aspirin lang na pwedeng inumin nyo na lang. A patient can take it indefinitely. And does that need really monitoring? Okay? So, ano yung kailangan nating gawin? These are the things that we need to do. We need to make sure that there is checking of ESR and WBC. Though, if though class, please take note. Though ESR is non-specific, but it will help confirm with inflammatory status of the patient. Okay, just like with CRP, have you heard the term CRP? CRP protein, C-reactive protein. No, it is also checked for inflammatory conditions. So these are non-specific, but it will be helpful to stream down or helpful to eliminate some differential diagnosis attributed to pain, redness, warmth, and swelling on the limb. Kasi if this is varicose vein, it does not have increased or it does not have significant increase for ESR. If it is myalgia attributed to maybe statin, it might increase ESR. Okay, but it will be helped with checking for CKMB also. Then the D dimer. Okay, so it is checked. Another one is, since these are non-specific diagnostic blood tests, again, since these are not non-specific, so these are non-specific laboratory or blood tests, it is supplemented by imaging. Okay, so doctors need to check the limbs through Doppler and check blood flow and check ano yung if may obstruction talaga sa area kung saan mamula-mula at may pain at mainit. All right? So please also take note that deep DVT and PE is connected to each other, and of course the other one, DVT, is happening inside the body, sometimes undetected, and it can be prevented. If we will able to prevent DVT, then we can prevent pulmonary embolism. So pulmonary embolism is very dangerous. It's asymptomatic and it causes sudden death. So we would not know this is happening inside the patient's body. It's not really like if you have infection, if a person has infection and the patient's fever is escalating, then you would understand that the infection is worsening. And if the patient's blood pressure dropped suddenly, it is really in the worst condition, like proceeding to septic shock. But for DVT, if this part here, if our thrombus here will be dislodged, yun yung worst scenario. It's asymptomatic. Hindi madedetect ng katawan ng tao na umalis na pala siya dun sa valve ng veins at nag-travel somewhere. At if mapunta siya sa lungs, the moment that we realize na nandun na siya sa lungs, the patient might be in shock or really will die right there and then. So, that's why also, yung na-mention natin kanina na dapat rapid DOAC yung treatment. Okay? Any questions? Anyone? Students, any questions? This point? May I see a thumbs up if you understand our lecture from the start up to this point? Para alam ko kung saan ko ako babalik. Meron pa tayong dapat balikan. As we'll proceed to risk factors. So, pangit yung pagka-save ko sa module, naputol yung provoked and unprovoked. Please take note that there are two classifications of risk factors. Okay? We have provoked and unprovoked. Then also for risk, we have persistent or permanent. Yan. Do not get confused. They have parang same, they have the same connotations here. I will just differentiate permanent and persistent in a while. Then we have also transient risks. Okay. So balikan natin si provoked and unprovoked. So our provoked risk will cause provoked DVT. And unprovoked risk causes unprovoked DVT. That really makes sense. No need to memorize that one. Okay? Provoked risk cause provoked DVT, and unprovoked risks cause unprovoked DVT. So if the patient undergo recent surgery, trauma, and it developed thrombosis leading to DVT, if the origin is trauma, then the condition is called provoked DVT. If the patient is taking high estrogen therapy and plus smoking, and led to pathologic activation, we call it thrombosis, and develop DVT, and then that DVT is called provoked DVT. Does that make sense, class? What is provoked DVT is? It is based on the risk factor, the cause of the DVT. All right. Going to unprovoked DVT. Idiopathic. Walang rason. Hindi malaman ano yung cause. Aside from idiopathic, if it's also genetic. So if the thrombosis just happened without infection, thrombosis happens even if the patient do not have hypertension, any risk for having thrombosis in the first place. That is idiopathic. And the DVT happens later on, so it is classified as unprovoked DVT. Okay? So, please put that in mind so that you would understand later our treatment algorithm, the provoked and unprovoked. Okay? Going back to the risks. We have permanent and permanent. In some books, they call it permanent. In some, they call it persistent. Okay? So, when we say permanent, for example, this one, family history. So, alangan, persistent yan siya. Permanent yan siya, okay? Male, the sex. That's permanent, okay? Kasi even if there is change of gender, if you are born male, then that is your characteristic. Age, okay? That's permanent. Now, we have words here like persistent. It is this one. Persistent, ito siya. Persistent, persistent, persistent. Okay, I forgot to highlight this one. Autoimmune disease are permanent and genetic conditions are permanent. So in other words, they are grouped together, the permanent and persistent risks, and you have to memorize them. You memorize these risks. But generally, they are your characteristic as a person and genetic condition and autoimmune condition and other conditions that are chronic. Okay? So yun yung mga persistent risks. On the other hand, transient or temporary. Like example, there's major surgery, there's hospitalization, there's immobilization, trauma, maybe there is a vehicular accident, some other circumstances that led to trauma, and also of course related to reduced mobility. And there's always here at least 3 days. Immobilization, reduced mobility, hospitalization of more than 3 days is a transient risk. So it is important if you will have your exposure or internship in a cardio unit, you will always take note, like the same thing with infectious disease. Patients days upon admission. You have to label day 1, day 2, day 3. Take note of this one because you have to contextualize your goals based on the increasing risk. If the patient is in ICU, imagine class, I don't know if you have an experience with visiting an ICU unit, who were able to visit ICU unit here in the past. Meron namang nakapasok to observe. There are patients there that are newly admitted. There are patients there that are really hooked in the monitor for several weeks and months. And based on I don't know if this is kind of funny, but I really curious, because before when I was in Davao Doctors, I cannot forget. I hope he rests in peace. He is confined in Davao Doctors. When I came in 2012, he was already there for, I think, mali yung sinulat ko. He was already there for 6 years. Imagine, 6 years. I was in Davao Doc for almost 2 years. So when I resigned, so 8 years na siya doon. When I think when I had my when I had my ultrasound there, I was pregnant 2016. He was there. It's more or less more than 10 years siya nasa Davao Doc. He died already, and I don't know how did he survive that long. He's in the ICU, and he's an American American citizen siya. May insurance siya. So doon siya nabubuhay. Doon siya ayaw talaga siyang i-out ng kanyang So you see, I can't imagine how did his body was able to endure thrombosis and all of this. Maybe his doctor was really good, but alam mo yung gamot niya, class, ang dami talaga niyang gamot. Pero sometimes yung kanyang order, pag nag-order in a week siguro twice or thrice, mga gamot lahat, in between that one, ang order sa kanya, tissue, wet wipes, diaper, ganun. Daming charges every day. Kaya, prominent siya dun sa pharmacy. What I'm trying to say is, you have to take note of the number of days your patient is admitted, because every day, the transient risk increases. Okay, we have also here pregnancy and cesarean section. So I've been to this journey before. It's really dangerous, and there are a lot of cases that the cesarean section is the cause of mortality of women, no? Also, long haul flights. Sinong madalas mag-travel dito? More than 5 hours of flying against the gravity without moving around, no? It really increases risk. So we have to make sure that we have preventable, we can advise our patients with hypertension, if they are traveling, they are sitting for a long time, there should be remediations. What are these things? Later on, we will discuss. And estrogen therapy. So not all those who take estrogen really has this very high risk. High estrogen therapy attributed to cancer management, and also even if sabi ko kanina not really yung mga gumagamit ng contraceptives, but if there is smoking, that really increase the risk. So pag lang yung low dose lang na estrogen therapy for contraception and for anong tawag, nakalimutan yung tawag doon, for transgender nga, basta yung hormonal replacement. Okay, hormonal replacement, pwede siya, wala masyadong risk, basta it will not be combined with smoking. Okay? So we have provoked risk leading to provoked DVT, and provoked risk that leads to development of unprovoked DVT. And then they have permanent and persistent versus transient risk. So all of these here are all of these are the basis of therapy. Okay, our basis of therapy. So let's just dig deeper also to the drugs that causes thrombosis. I think hindi ko nasulat yan. Okay? So na-mention ko na si estrogen and then smoking. So I don't need to really emphasize that one. What I want to emphasize is heparin. Then we have also chemotherapeutic agents. What I want you to remember, for chemo agents, we have methotrexate, tamoxifen, cisplatin. Ito siya yung common na binibigay, di ba? As methotrexate, tamoxifen, in combination with SERMs, doubles the risk of thrombosis. So this one with patients with breast cancer, ovarian cancer. Okay? So, yun siya. Doubles the risk for thrombosis. That's why they're parang standby yung mga cardio dyan. Hindi lang onco yung nagmamanage ng patients na nagkakaroon ng breast cancer. Meron din cardiologist dapat nagmamanage, nagmo-monitor to avoid thrombosis and manage thrombosis quickly. Now, if walang estrogen if the patient doesn't receive estrogen, the patient doesn't receive chemotherapeutic agents, but the patient receives heparin for some other condition, ano yung mga conditions na a patient is prescribed with heparin? Ano yung mga conditions, class? Mga sakit na nagpre-prescribe ang doktor ng heparin. Tandaan nyo yon. Saan nyo makikita ang heparin? Sa anong mga sakit? Pag may makita kayong heparin, dapat tignan nyo kaagad ang platelet count. No? Titingnan nyo kaagad ang platelet count. Ano yung normal platelet count? Anyone? Ano yung normal platelet count? Ano dapat ang cut-off? Tapos, that will help you determine if there would be possibility for thrombosis. Okay, so that condition is called heparin-induced thrombocytopenia, led to development of thrombosis. So kung babalikan natin, students, kung babalikan natin sa taas, saan siya mabilong? Dito siya sa provoke risk. So dagdagan natin dito additional natin sa provoke risk is patients receiving heparin. Okay, you following? It is a provoked risk if a patient is receiving heparin. And that heparin will decrease platelet, leads to thrombosis, and develop furthermore deep vein thrombosis that is now called HIT, heparin-induced thrombocytopenia provoked DVT. Then, we will going to add here also heparin treatment in the transient risk. Okay? So we have two types of heparin treatment. Type 1, non-immunoglobulin mediated. Type 2, immunoglobulin mediated. They have different characteristics. In terms of activation, no, in terms of onset, this one is acute. This one is delayed. Okay, that's in terms of onset. In terms of decrease on the platelet level, this one is significant. This one is mild. Okay? In terms of recovery, type 1, since it's non-immunologic, it will resolve on its own. Okay? It will resolve on its own. Kumbaga, parang initial ano siya ng katawan na nagkaroon ng reaction due to heparin, but eventually, since it's non-immune mediated, our body will just recover, and then the platelet count will be eventually returned to normal. All right? Now, if it's immune mediated, then the delayed onset but the significant fall on the platelet, no? And then there would be some treatments required here for it to be managed. Hindi tayo mag-o-observe lang. Meron tayong treatment pag type 2. Number 1 is stop heparin. Okay? Stop heparin. Number 1 yan siya. That is the culprit of the thrombosis. So, stop natin yan siya. But it has to have replacement. So, it has to have substitution. Ano yung mga sinasubstitute? Si NHA agent. Kilala nyo si NHA agent? Non-heparin anticoagulant. Madami yan sila. No? Madami yung mga non-heparin agent. Kumbaga, for me, when I study anticoagulant, I categorize it to heparin and non-heparin. Dami niyan. Pagdating sa non-heparin, ito yung parang gusto ko maging visuals ninyo sa brain ninyo when you pull out in your memory. Anticoagulants, we have heparin and non-heparin. So sa heparin, we have unfractionated heparin. We have low molecular weight heparin. Ito yung mga significant heparin na nasa hospital or in the market used for managing coagulation problems. Sa non-heparin, ang dami niyan. No? Ang dami. Later on, meron tayong nakalagay dito. Argatroban, Danaparoid, Bivalirudin, Fundaparinox, Rivaroxaban. So, ulit-ulit nyo siyang basahin and then later on, i-memorize nyo talaga siya. Treat at least 4 weeks. If patient doesn't have thrombosis, then that's enough. Pero if the patient has already thrombosis based on the Doppler and the test, then the treatment, tandaan nyo, is always at least 3 months. And later, I will present in relation to the risk, how long, at least 3 months, and until when. Again, at least 3 months and until when. Okay. So, meron tayo ditong options: Fundaparinox, Argatroban, Bivalirudin, Danaparoid, Rivaroxaban. And it was mentioned in our introduction that we have to give consideration for every patient. So we have to make sure the creatinine clearance or the renal function of the patient before we choose what is the best substitute for that heparin that we discontinued. No? Yung sabi ko sa inyo kanina, class, na meron kayong gagawin na plan na isasabit nyo sa doctor, intervention plan, monitoring plan, things like that. If you have found out that there's HIT happening in a patient, heparin-induced thrombocytopenia, automatically you have to stop heparin. And when you do that, the doctors will expect you to give alternative or substitute. And these are top 5 of the substitute for heparin. But they have specificity here. Which one should you give? Okay? If the patient is outpatient, please be mindful. If the patient is outpatient and is ambulatory, these are your options. Why these are the options? Because they are not admitted, they should receive the convenience that they have as ambulatory patient. Okay? Now, if in the exam or anywhere which you are interviewed by the doctor, okay, what will be our substitution? Because the patient will be discharged tomorrow and I need to stop heparin. Okay, the patient will be discharged. So either Fundaparinox or Rivaroxaban. Now, if you check the patient's condition, the patient's creatinine clearance is 10. But the patient needs to be out from the hospital. So, tingnan nyo kung pwede ba yun, no? Mga tricks lang yan ni ma'am. Pero pag 10 yung creatinine clearance, pwede ba ang Rivaroxaban? Hindi. Pwede ba to? Sabi dyan, avoid. So, hindi. Avoid. So, you will, based on that condition na creatinine clearance is 10, you have to advise the doctor why is it the patient should be discharged at this point. You have to question why the patient should be discharged at this point. Maybe we can at least make the patient's creatinine clearance at least 15 to 30 so that we can give Rivaroxaban. Right? I hope that makes sense, everyone. Now, if the patient's renal condition is good, then either of the two. But most often seen in the prescription, we have Fundaparinox. Even though it's sub-Q. No, anong brand ng Fundaparinox? That's the brand of Fundaparinox. And Rivaroxaban, sige daw po in the chat box. Arixtra, Sarauto, okay, very good. That's good. So mostly yun yung mga, alam niyo yung, hindi taga Davao dito, but meron kasi kami dito sa Davao yung lingap. Yun yung mga common drug na binibigay sa lingap center. Yung para maging libre siya, bigyan tayo ng pera ng Davao City government to finance your medication kasi ang mahal nito, di ba? So, yun. Now, if the patient is still inside the tawag nito, the hospital admitted, then this is okay to be given. So, pwedeng either argatroban, bivalirudin, danaperoid. Now, class, even also nasa hospital pa ang patient, pwede pa din itong ibigay. Okay? Hindi siya restricted. But if the patient is ambulatory, yun yung ating priority, si Fundaparinox and Rivaroxaban. And then, please take note, ano yung routine lab monitoring. Kaya binibigay also si Fundaparinox sa outpatient kasi wala siyang required lab monitoring. The same with Rivaroxaban. Okay, so depende na yan talaga sa doctor. Ano yung kanyang ibibigay for outpatients. For inpatients, we can still give that and it's good. Kasi sa heparin, what is the laboratory monitoring for heparin level? What is the laboratory monitoring for the heparin level? APTT, very good. So, pareho sila, merong APTT din also. And then the danaperoid is anti-10A. Ngayon, all of these details, as much as possible, familiarize and later on memorize. I'm really sorry for that. There's no other way but to memorize so that you can answer the circumstance, what will be the best options. Okay, there's no other way. I cannot help you with the memorization, but this is how the patient is managed if it's hit. Stop heparin and replace it with either of these 5. Okay. Now, this is for FYI, the goals of therapy. I think we all agreed to this already. This is for diagnosis. I've mentioned this already. Compression ultrasonography. In some cases, Doppler lang yung ginagamit natin. We have non-pharmacological measures. So, early ambulation when possible. Class, please take note ha, ambulation yan. Isulat ko ng matlaki. Ambulation. Not amputation. Okay, baka mamaya, inaantok na kayo dyan. Biglang may option doon na amputation sa exam, ipa-amputate yung patients ninyo. Early ambulation when possible. So if you go back to the risks, sa transient risks, kaya di ba, for example, nagsisaryan yung babae, yung kakapanganak lang, bakit talagang kailangan patayuin after 24 hours? Bakit kailangan, aside from moving the feet, bakit kailangan? Ito yung reason, early ambulation for better blood flow. Okay? But there's also restrictions and precautions. Right? Hindi yung namang maglakad ka ng ilang steps, like 1, 2, 3 steps, then sit down na naman, lie down na naman. Huwag yung i-baby masyado yung kakapanganak lang kasi sometimes if may hypertension yung kakapanganak lang and thrombosis is evident, that will, alam mo yung biglang namamatay class na kakapanganak lang, that is because of pulmonary embolism. If it's not pulmonary embolism, the emboli went to the brain and causes stroke. No, yung biglang pagtayo at nahimatay at namatay bigla yung kakapanganak na okay naman yung kanyang journey sa pregnancy and all of the stuff. Ito yun, thrombosis yun. Either pulmonary embolism or cerebrovascular accident. Diba? So, early ambulation is possible according to the prescribed ambulation. Huwag naman nating ipa-walk along the aisle from station here to station there. So, just enough lang to allow ambulation. This one, graduated compression stockings. Tawa ako nito sa 5A last Monday. Ano ibig sabihin ng graduated compression stockings? Yun ba yung suot-suot ng mga nursing students during graduation? Yung puti, yun ba yun? Graduated compression stockings. Ladies, we have different stockings, right? Stockings for for fashion. We have stockings for whether reasons, depende pang bundle up. Compression stockings are designed for a specific role, but it's limited for prevention of thrombotic events. Okay? It's not really good for, or it's not really significant for treatment. Most of it is for prevention. So it's called graduated. The same thing with graduated cylinder. It has controlled or measured pressure. Diba? Parang sa beaker, sa graduated cylinder, meron siyang 1 ml, 10 ml, 5 ml, 0 ml. So sa stockings natin, meron siyang controlled or measured pressure. Merong very tight, merong moderate, merong relax lang, ganon. For fashion na mga stockings, doesn't help for prevention. Why? Because for fashion stockings, it just snug fit, no? Didikit lang yan siya sa skin. Walang pressure. So we need the controlled pressure to help because, diba, in the veins, the valve should be like this. But during thrombosis, kasi mabigat na yung thrombus, weak na yung valve, nabigatan siya. So kailangan niya ng pressure to compress the walls so that this one will be compressed together and pressure going to the heart. The pressure of the blood going to the heart will be maintained. The blue one is paano ko ba explain ito? Ito yung normal. Okay, ito. No? Pag ito siya, nalagyan ng mga thrombus, alam niyo yung loose thread? Ito yung mangyayari. Lulupasay yan siya. Diba? Lulupasay kasi nabigatan. Kumbaga, kung lulupasayan siya, the blood doesn't have enough pressure to go up. Mawawala yung pressure to go up kasi yung valve na yan, yung tutulong to make the blood go up. Imbis aakyat siya, ang mangyayari, it will be pulled in the lower limbs. Okay? So it will be pulled in the lower limbs, promoting DVT to worsen. Okay? So if wala pang nangyaring mga like major events, patient is advised to wear compression stockings to help with the pressure. Yung pressure na nabibigay dito sa walls ng veins natin, if that is compressed, yung itong black na yan, kasi loose thread siya, eventually, it will go back to its normal position through the compression, and it will be like that. If it will be like that, then it will help the blood pull its way up to the heart. But that compression stockings class is helpful for prevention. And it's good naman, hindi naman siya useless maybe for treatment, but hindi talaga yung main goal ng compression yung treatment. It is for prevention lang talaga. Okay? This one, IVC filters. Interior vena cava. Tulat natin. Inferior. Ano yung inferior vena cava filters? Can be given, but only for patients with contraindications to anticoagulants. Okay, pag bawal mag-anticoagulant ang patients, non-pharmacologic yung approach, we can give IVC filters, inferior vena cava filters. All right. Any questions before we enter pharmacological measures? Any questions, class? Para ma-resolve natin before tayo doon sa treatment using pharmacological measures. Walang question? Sige. Dito tayo sa pharmacological measures. It says here, initial anticoagulation. So, I have mentioned already a while ago, heparins. No? Mga heparins. Ito silang dalawa. Heparins to silang dalawa. Low molecular weight heparin, such as enoxaparin, and then unfractionated heparin, which is given IV infusion. Okay, both of them are monitored using APTT. Okay, ano yung APTT? Hindi yung song ng apatse. Okay? Activated partial thromboplastin time. Very good. If there's increase of APTT, it means to say there's longer time to clot. If there's decreased APTT, it's shorter time to clot. And there are cutoffs here. Okay? It has also the same meaning with INR. INR is for warfarin monitoring, right? INR, internationalized ratio, is for warfarin monitoring. The same thing, if we have high INR, it has longer time to clot. If have short or low INR, we have shorter time to clot. Ay, nasa dulo pala ako ng aking slide. Okay. So, if our APTT and INR is high, it's longer time to clot, it will allow bleeding to happen. Higher chances of bleeding. But if our APTT and INR is shorter or lower than normal, so it has shorter time to clot, meaning there will be faster time to form thrombus, okay, or clotting. Now, dapat synchronous or dapat properly monitored ito. No? Dapat nandun tayo sa optimum level. So, we have to monitor to make sure na hindi tayo lalagpas at hindi tayo bababa because we don't want thrombus formation, but of course, we don't want bleeding. Diba? So, yun siya. Now, for Fundaparinox, we have also here mentioned as alternative, but it has some conditions that we have to take note. Now, ito yung also one of the things that you have to remember. You have to avoid overlapping of therapy. Hindi pwedeng sabay mag-heparin tapos mag-warfarin. Ano na mangyari? No? Bleeding yung patient mo. Okay? So, avoid overlap therapy. Now, this is our algorithm here. I hope you understood already the pathophysiologic conditions and the nature of anticoagulant so that you will be able to grasp these things easily. Please take note that minimum requirement for treatment is 3 months. And when to know how long depends on the kind or type of DVT. Okay? And you can just give one, either of the following. So we have heparins and non-heparins. So it depends on the doctor, hindi kayo yung magde-decide, okay? But you have to advise the doctor if you think the choice is not the best choice. Now, when will you consider preventative versus indefinite? You will check for malignancy, okay? And then you will check also the risk, if it's permanent or transient. So if there's no malignancy, these are the preferred drugs. If there is malignancy, we have here heparin and direct factor 10A inhibitors. Alright? So yun siyang yung mga options natin. Ngayon, sabi ko kanina, tandaan niyo yung categories because it will determine how long. So we have here provoked by transient risk, first unprovoked, proximal unprovoked, isolated symptomatic distal, second unprovoked, cancer associated. So I hope you can understand the terms here. Provoke, yun yung risks nandoon sa provoke, and transient risk combined. Ano yung mga nandun sa provoke? May heparin siya, may estrogen siya, and then nagkaroon siya ngayon ng surgery. So that's provoke and transient. Now, kung unprovoked lang, in the absence of transient risk factor, so yan yung another class. Proximal, unprovoked. Paano ma-determine ang proximal? In a patient's leg, this is the knee, this is the lower calf, the feet, this is up here is the heart. So knee, hip, ano ba yung drawing ko? Hip to knee is proximal, di ba? Malapit sa point of origin or malapit siya doon sa yung point of reference. So the leg, upper leg is proximal. Itong proximal unprovoked, dito yung DVT. Pag nasa baba ng knee, that's distal. Okay? So all of these categories for VTE requires minimum of 3 months. Walang magkakamali nito ha, minimum of 3 months itong lahat. Okay? Tandaan nyo yan. And when should we stop it? For provoked transient risk factor, since it has transient lang, up to 3 months lang. Kung walang transient risk and provoked siya, minimum, and then reassess. Doctor will reassess and up to different, it depends now. Excuse me. It depends now until when. Kasi di ba ang unprovoked, it is either genetic or autoimmune. So depende yan siya sa doctor. Ngayon, proximal unprovoked, at least 3 months, and then malapit siya sa heart, malapit siya sa lungs, kaya it has to be long-term. Isolated symptomatic distal, malayo sa heart. No? At least 3 months, and actually this is just ano yan siya. It's open for patient's preference kung gusto niyang to continue to make sure there's coverage or no further complications. Then, now we have second unprovoked. It means to say second ito nakalimutan ko yung term. Second occurrence. Okay. So, 3 months pa rin and reassess for indefinite because again, it's unprovoked. No other reason, walang ginawa, walang nangyari. The DVT, the thrombosis condition developed because of idiopathic reason, because of genetic conditions, things like that. So, it should be assessed for indefinite therapy. Cancer-associated VTE, minimum of 3 to 6 months, then reassess. Continue if overt evidence of cancer or continuing to receive anti-cancer therapy. So, remember the duration of anticoagulation and remember this one here. Okay? Yun lang yung treatment natin. Ngayon, balikan natin yung drawing ko kanina. Di ba yung drawing ko, heparin and non-heparin agents? Sa heparin, ito lang yung dalawa. No? Kayo nang mag-memorize nito kasi ito yung mga drug profiles na sinasabi ko na it doesn't need explanation from me because we are all pharmacists here. You just review it. Paulit-ulit to memorize it. You are now all aware that heparins has or cause the transient risk of heparin-induced thrombocytopenia. So if these two are not allowed to be given or if these two should be discontinued, what are the things to be given to substitute it? Number one, in our list here, it's not according to significance, but the first thing that we have here is the warfarin. It's a non-heparin agent. So, meron akong drawing, di ba, dito? Dito tayo. Lagyan natin dito, warfarin. INR ang monitoring. Yan. So, hanggang ma-fill in ito lahat later on. Basahin niyo yung nasa module. Now, if we were going to use warfarin to replace or substitute the heparin, there should be bridging. No? There is a bridging between warfarin and heparin. Ano yung bridging? Di ba? Meron tayong order na dapat i-stop pag may thrombocytopenia. So, low molecular weight heparin, unfractionated heparin for at least 5 days and until INR at least 2. Ang warfarin natin, the INR monitoring normal is 2 to 3. Okay, so at least 2 for 2 days in a row. Yun yung requirement for this one. No, and then it follows here, initial dosing typically 5 milligram for elderly, sick, low molecular or low body weight. Right? Frequent monitoring necessary until stable in range INR. So pag kumbaga, may sabi kanina na avoid overlapping. But at some point, hindi mo dapat also i-abruptly stop. And this is just bridging. So bridging is different from overlapping, because when you say overlapping, it is really prescribed at the same time without the intention to stop the previous one. So bridging is to just stabilize INR of the warfarin before stopping heparin. Okay? And then patients are encouraged to maintain consistent diet. Please take note, yung sa mga undergrad na mga students ko, pag may warfarin, always they advise do not eat or do not eat vitamin K rich foods. It should not be the case, because if you will not eat, then you will increase your warfarin level abruptly. You will increase INR. Okay? It should be consistent. That's the term. What is the usual diet? Should be the same. Consistent diet. Okay? That's pharmacodynamic and pharmacokinetic. That's always the wrong recommendation na stop or avoid vitamin K rich foods when taking warfarin. Okay? Hindi. It should be the same. The usual. No increase, no decrease, so that the profile of the drug will not be erratic. Okay, so that's bridging. Again, bridging is different from overlapping. Overlapping is prescribing at the same time without specific end to each of these of this medication. Bridging is to stop a drug and replace it with the other one, and with the intention of stabilizing the patient first. And to make sure that there is stability already, INR should be 2 to 3. Okay, for warfarin. Direct factor 10A, rivaroxaban, apixaban, edoxaban. So from the DRE is a direct oral anticoagulant, right? And then we have the Bigatran. Okay, bakit siya tinawag na DOAC? DOAC, direct oral anticoagulant. We have DRAE, the Bigatran, direct thrombin inhibitor. Please write it. Hindi ko na alam saan siya isulat. Ang dami-dami. Bakit siya tinawag na direct oral anticoagulant? Based on the MOA. Direct thrombin inhibitor, si dabigatran, si rivaroxaban, apixaban, edoxaban, direct factor 10A inhibitor. Okay? Understand why they are called DOAC? They don't have the same MOA. Different yung MOA. Direct inhibitor, direct 10A inhibitor. And they have reversal agents. This one is idalicizumab. This one is andexanet alpha. This one. The 3 of them. And this content here is in the AF module. Ito yung sinabi ko kanina. So, inulit ko dito para ma-memorize ninyo yan. Balikan natin dito sa ating table. We have direct thrombin inhibitor, direct 10A inhibitor. Okay? So, these are examples of non-heparin agents, non-heparin anticoagulant agents. So, we now know it's warfarin. This is dabigatran. Here, we have rivaroxaban, and apixaban, and inoxaban. What else? Nasa baba din, meron tayong fundaparinox. Indirect factor 10A. Kasalungat siya doon sa RAE. Indirect ito. Pareho sila sa factor 10A pero indirect. We have fundaparinox. If you will recall, and let's show it once again para ma-recall talaga, itong aking table dito, this is direct 10A inhibitor. This is indirect 10A inhibitor. They're both working on 10A. Okay? So, I hope you can relate and matuhog-tuhog ninyong mga nababasa ninyo at mabalikan nyo siya ulit mamaya. So, we have direct thrombin inhibitor, the dabigatran, and all of this stuff here is also presented under AF. Please be mindful of the drug interactions when all of these, kasi hindi ko na ito iisa-isahin. Kayo nang bahala mag-review niyan. As pharmacists, we are expected to know these things. Now, if we will going to switch between different anticoagulants, heparin to and from non-heparin agents, ano yung gagawin? And within themselves also na non-heparin. Warfarin to DOAC, this is non-heparin to non-heparin, right? Non-heparin to non-heparin. Pwede siya. Alright? So, kung warfarin yung gamot ng patient, tapos i-shift to DOAC, pwede. Ito yung pwedeng gawin. Warfarin to apixaban, warfarin to edoxaban. So, ito yung ating gagawin. Dapat mag-start ka or mag-stop ka, paano ba siya sabihin? You stop the warfarin and then monitor INR. Then you can start the next dose of DOAC when INR is less than 2. Okay? Is less than 2. Kasi baka biglang bumaba or biglang tumaas, depende. Sometimes there are idiosyncratic reactions. So these are based on evidences na with clinical trials. Huwag yun ang guluhin, memorize na lang natin. Stop warfarin and start DOAC when INR is less than 2. And then, if edoxaban naman, we can start edoxaban or rivaroxaban, the INR is less than 2.5. Di ba, ang sabi natin, ang monitoring ng warfarin is 2 to 3 yung INR. Potent kasi masyado, class, ang direct oral anticoagulant. Okay? Potent siya masyado. So, yun yung considerations dyan. So, kung bigyan natin kaagad ng DOAC and the patient's INR is still 3, no? Still 3. So, it's longer time to clot, right? Longer time to clot. So, if we will give it, if the patient INR is just near here, tapos bigyan natin ng DOAC, the result is bleeding. So, kaya pababain muna natin kung apixaban or dabigatran, ito yung kailangan, mababa talaga siya. Less than 2. Para hindi ma-proceed to bleeding. Okay, because that is based on their clinical findings. So this is already evidence-based na algorithm. And we will just memorize these things. Now, unfractionated heparin to DOAC. Stop unfractionated heparin infusion. Start DOAC immediately. Except edoxaban, start 4 hours later. Low molecular weight to DOAC. Start DOAC at the time of the next schedule. So it will be, this recommendation is sound if we have already patient case. So it depends on the time. DOAC to low molecular weight heparin. These are the conditions too. And DOAC to warfarin, controversy with overlap versus bridging. So most of the time, it is least observed or least practiced. Nevertheless, ito siya, magulo masyado. Pag hindi ka nagpa-practice everyday, talagang mahirap. So just try to review it. At least we have 1 week pa before the exam. Right? According to, we have transition overlap therapy here. If using warfarin overlap with heparin, we have for more than 5 days, we can use, ito yung mga conditions according to DiPiro. So, ano pa ba? Long-term therapy. I think na-mention na natin ito kanina. Special interventions. Yan. Itong thrombolysis and thrombolectomy. It's also mentioned sa ACS natin. But it is parang ano na siya. Supplemental na ito siya. Like after initiating the medications, we can have special interventions to promote quality of life. Now, for pregnant women, this is preferred. And we have to make sure of this one. Na ma-remember natin yan siya. Heparin lang for pregnant women and for renal patients. What else? Tingnan nyo dito, renal impairment of heparin is preferred. For pediatrics, heparin is allowed, but warfarin is standard. And for monitoring, this is mentioned. Please remember that if there is prosthetic valve, the cutoff for INR is higher. This one. That is also mentioned during AF module. Okay, I guess everything was also mentioned a while back about this, no routine monitoring. Of course, you assess for bleeding, recurrence, and adherence at follow-up. These are our monitoring parameters. And I don't know if we have an idea. Those who are located right now in US, I don't know, na-mention lang ito during a conference. Anticoagulant clinics, is it a thing there? Sino nasa US ngayon? Meron daw mga anticoagulant clinics that are manned by pharmacists and they are doing pharmacist-led interventions. I tried to roam around when I was in Canada. I didn't find any anticoagulant clinics as outpatient pharmacist-led intervention mga based clinic. But according to ACCP, there are anticoagulant clinics in US. Wala ba na sa US dito sa section B? So meron talagang anticoagulant clinics daw para for monitoring. Kasi ang hirap or ang daming under anticoagulant medications due to DVT. Okay? So these are our monitoring parameters. Ito yung ginagawa sa anticoagulant clinics ng mga pharmacists. To check for parameters, safety endpoints, to check for the drug's efficacy endpoints. Okay, if you want, I don't know if that's possible, but that can be your specialization, anticoagulant pharmacists. We have also pediatric pharmacists, cardiology pharmacists, specifically can have that in the anticoagulant clinics. Okay? And I was over time. You answer your module. Hopefully, you'll be able to review the recording and listen to the discussion. This is stop recording. Any questions, class?